Perhaps in this life, everyone has, at least once, felt awkward in front of a request. For example, a college friend suddenly sends a message after years of no contact, asking to borrow money. Or a coworker asks for help with something completely beyond your responsibility. Or a family member asks you to do something you don't want to do, but your lips just can't form the word no. I used to be like that too, always trying not to hurt anyone, always wanting to keep everything calm. But the more I live, the more I realize the cost of not wanting to upset others is often far greater than that of a clear, honest refusal. There were nights I lay awake, asking myself over and over, why can't I just say no? Just one word, and yet it feels unbearably heavy. I was afraid of being misunderstood, afraid that others would see me as cold, selfish, or ungrateful. Afraid of losing affection, even if that affection was just polite formality. Then, one day, a friend I used to be close with messaged me to borrow money. It was a simple story, but it left me unsettled the whole day. I typed and deleted the reply dozens of times, about to write, I'm a bit short on money right now, or this month is full of expenses, maybe next month. Every sentence felt like a trap, because once you offer a reason, people will always find a way to argue against it. In the end, I deleted everything, leaving only 2 words. Can't do. Short. Clear. No explanation. For the first time in my life, I learned what it feels like to refuse, without guilt. We fear saying no because we want to be loved. I've realized that many people, myself included, don't dare to say no. Because we believe that rejection means losing love. We fear that when we say no, others will be hurt. We fear being seen as cold, arrogant, or ungrateful. But in truth, what we fear most is not being loved anymore. We grow up in a culture that values harmony and compromise. Where not offending anyone is praised as a virtue. Since childhood, we've been taught to share, to help, to sacrifice. But very few have taught us that kindness must have boundaries. When we keep trying to please everyone, we slowly lose ourselves. We give until we are empty, until one day we realize that there's nothing left. No time. No energy. Not even faith. I remember once reading a line. Saying no is another way of saying yes to what truly matters. That day, I realized. Saying no is not selfish. It's a way of protecting the values we truly wish to preserve. The truth about the most effective no. There's something interesting I've noticed. The most mature, confident people I've met all have one thing in common. They don't over-explain. Their refusals are short, clear, but filled with respect. Can't. Sorry, I can't. Thank you, but I'm not available. That's it. No because, no I wish I could but. No explanation at all. When you say no with a reason, others will use that reason to negotiate or persuade you. But when you say no calmly, with respect, they will understand, it's a decision, not an excuse. Refusing doesn't mean hurting someone. Refusing the right way is an act of honesty and fairness in relationships. Because if we agree unwillingly, then in the end, both sides will be hurt. No, the shortest word, yet the bravest one. I once thought saying no was cold. But as I've grown older, I've realized it takes far more courage to say no than to say yes. When you say yes, you are liked, praised, and safe. But when you say no, you face disappointment, judgment, and even guilt from within. And yet, only when we dare to say no do we truly mature. Because saying no is how we set boundaries. The line between living for others and living for ourselves. It took me a long time to understand this. I've agreed to help even when I was exhausted. I've kept relationships that had already grown cold. I've nodded when my heart was screaming, don't. Until one day, I realized. A yes that doesn't come from willingness is just another form of self-harm. The gentle art of refusal, the emotional sandwich. Of course, we can't always say no bluntly. At work, at home, or among loved ones. Grace is what allows us to protect both their feelings and our peace. I came across something called the sandwich method. A way of saying no that's gentle yet clear. It has 3 layers, like 3 emotional tones that deserve to be heard. First layer, acknowledge and appreciate. Thank you for trusting me. Second, be clear about refusal. But right now, I can't help. Third, end with goodwill. I hope you're doing well, let's stay in touch. This way, both sides retain their dignity. The listener doesn't feel rejected, and the speaker doesn't feel guilty. That is the art of those who understand that. Saying no is not closing the door, it's keeping it from falling off its hinges. When kindness gets exploited. I've met people who are so kind that they forget their own limits. They keep giving, and eventually, others start taking advantage. It begins with a few small favors, then turns into endless, unreasonable demands. And it all starts with one word, yes. I used to be that person. An old acquaintance would often borrow money, borrow things, even borrow my time. I thought I was being helpful. But slowly, I realized I was no longer being respected. Kindness without boundaries becomes weakness. And goodness without restraint makes others think it's something they're entitled to. Saying no, not to avoid trouble, but to live truthfully. In the past, I said no to avoid inconvenience. Now, I say no to stay true to myself. In a world where everyone tries to please everyone, sincerity sometimes begins with a straightforward word. Saying no is not unkind. On the contrary, it is the most honest form of caring. We don't deceive others with false promises, nor deceive ourselves with silent endurance. I've learned that if a relationship only survives when we always say yes, then that relationship was never real to begin with. The no's I am grateful for. Now, I'm grateful for every time I've said no. For refusing to lend money I couldn't afford to lose. For saying no to unreasonable favors. For skipping gatherings I didn't want to attend. And even for saying no to myself when I wanted to do something out of fear, not love. Each time, I felt lighter. Not because I avoided problems, but because I was finally living in alignment with my heart. And strangely, once I began saying no to what wasn't right, life began to offer me new yes. New opportunities, genuine connections, and quiet joys born from freedom. Learn to love through boundaries. I once thought that love meant giving everything. Now I know, true love means knowing when to stop. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's a form of respect for both yourself and others. No one can keep giving without running dry. No one can carry everything just to keep the peace. People who know how to say no aren't cold. They're simply choosing to love more consciously. Because sometimes, no is another way of saying, I care about myself and about you. When no becomes a gentle word, I'm no longer afraid of the word no. To me now, no isn't rejection. It's a gentle greeting between two people who have both grown up. Saying no doesn't mean closing the door. It simply means keeping your heart from overflowing. So that when it matters, you still have room to say yes. To the things that truly deserve it. In a noisy world where everyone strives to be acknowledged, I choose to live slower. To speak less, to refuse more, but always with kindness. Because I believe, in the end, peace isn't found in what we hold on to, but in what we have the courage to let go of. And you, what do you think about this? Share your thoughts with me. I'd love to hear them.